I made it to Gay Bali. Holy cow, look at this view. I am here for about 4 days. Kelly is here in Paris with her mom for a couple weeks. I've decided to crash their party. They knew I was coming. This week, before I left Washington, D.C. to come to Paris, I had the opportunity to sit down with Prae Kriengwatana. I get a lot of questions from people who live outside the country that are interested in coming to the U.S. to work. This week, we sit down with Prae to talk about her journey from Thailand via Victoria Island, via Toronto, San Jose, Houston, where we ultimately crossed paths in Washington, D.C. It's a fantastic story. So I'm going to spend the next 4 days getting a little rest and relaxation. And we'll sit down and talk with Prae. So let's get this week going, shall we? All right, I am here with Prae Kriengwatana.
That was perfect.
How am I doing? Prae is a director in our International Tax Services group here in Washington National Tax Services. And Prae, I get a ton of questions about people that are working outside of the U.S. and that are interested in coming into the U.S. What I wanted to learn a little bit today was your story and your journey.
I'm a Thai citizen. My parents are still there, and I was just this Thai kid at about 13 or 14. I was like, I want to move to America. I want to, live the Hollywood dream. Wanted to move to San Francisco. Obviously, your parents say absolutely not. We've seen the movies. There's, bad things happen. So we negotiated, and we found this little island in Canada called Vancouver Island or Victoria. It's beautiful.
It is
Nothing
beautiful.
could go wrong in Victoria when I think as a parent looking at the horse carriages. So there I was. So I started my journey in Canada.
As a high schooler?
As a high schooler. I did boarding school. We wore like little kilts and a blazer. It was an all-girls school. It was, for anyone who ever wondered what it was like going to an all-girls boarding school, I personally loved it. The kind of friends you make. It's like your sisters for life.
So hold on. So when you were effectively in junior high, you raised your hand and say, "Hey, Mom and Dad, I want to go to North America and study."
That's right.
And they shipped you however many thousands of miles to boarding school in
That's right. When you're 14, you're pretty fearless. I didn't even have the right paperwork. Showed up, Mom left. This is before you had cell phones. Before anything, I had a bag this size, and that was that. And
wow. Look who's back.
What's up, guys?
On the Doug McHoney vlog. Phil in the middle of his, what's it called? Rotate. What are you doing? What's it? A rotation?
Rotation.
All right, rotation. If you watched last week's vlog, you learned about rotators. Tour. So Phil's showing me around his neighborhood, and then we're going to go meet up with Kelly and Kelly's mom. Oh, yummy.
I moved to Toronto for undergrad and then also for law school. And so at that point, I'd been in Canada for, a decade. I was feeling very Canadian, didn't make it home very much. And at that point, I think it was that junction one, and this I think a lot of folks might relate to, it's very difficult getting a job out of school. period.
Yeah.
Trying doing it with having visa requirements on top of that, it is extremely difficult. So I remember going to interviews with the Bay Street law firms. This is the equivalent of Wall Street in Toronto, and it was always that hiccup of, well, your grades are great, the interview went fine, and then you bring up that thorny issue of, well, I don't have Canadian citizenship at that time, and a lot of firms will balk because if they have the choice between someone of very equal grades and standing and having to not deal with the immigration issue, that's always going to be.
And help me understand what would be the concern for an employer with the immigration, that you only can work for so long and you have to go back, or how does that work?
So typically, and now speaking more from the American experience, you need in order to come as a worker, and there's a lot of categories obviously, but as a worker you need a sponsor to essentially say, this is a skilled worker, I have needs that I can't fill with using the American existing workforce, and it's quite a long and tedious process. It can for a lot of folks in a lot of countries, there's quotas, there's a lottery system, so just because you meet all the qualifications, it does not mean you're going to get it. So firms will have to pay an upfront investment cost in you and potentially not be able to keep you. So, the risk is understandable, and that's why, especially for coming straight out of school, it's easy to say, well, I'm going to forego that candidate.
So you did your internship with the local law firm, and we're like, okay, this isn't the type of law, but that's what's great. We talk a lot about internships, and that's the point of internships, is that not everybody who does whatever they do for their last internship, you don't always go into that, because sometimes you do that experience and you're like, okay, this isn't what I want to do, and it sounds like it wasn't sounds like it was a terrible experience. It was just like, listen,
loved it, but
this is not what I want to do for my full-time career. So then you looked at other alternative positions and found a job at another one of the big four, but in Thailand. So you went back to Toronto, finished your law degree. Figured we'd give you a tour of Phil's apartment here in Paris. It's really nice. This is the kitchen. This is the Cincinnati Skyline Chili. I like to refer to it as meat soup. Living room, closet, bedroom. This is, one bedroom apartment. This is pretty spacious for Parisian standards. It's nice. So this is Phil's bathroom. It's got a toilet, a shower, and look at the cute little washing machine.
This is cool. Boy, you couldn't be real.
Right. We're in the smallest elevator ever. So you went back and started an international tax in Thailand. Was it in Bangkok?
It was in Bangkok.
Okay.
And for those who are familiar at all with Bangkok, it's a pretty crazy city to live in. It doesn't really sleep. It was my first job, so I was really excited, wanted to do really well, and enjoyed it very much for the first year or so, and then realized that, well, if I really want to do exciting international tax planning, this was not the market to do it.
So how did you go about kind of infiltrating the U.S. market?
It's a case of always keeping an eye out for that opportunity to, so you in that first year, I think in your first job, everyone's just so focused on doing your job. And then you start to assess what you're looking for. And so I think most Big Fours have a lot of international rotation opportunities that they're there, but you sort of have to look for it a little bit. And so at that time, the opportunity came up. They said, do you want to do a rotation? It was between Tokyo or the Silicon Valley sort of area.
Okay. So San Jose,
San Jose, exactly. It was Mountain View. But And so I was like, gosh, Tokyo sounds awesome. Who doesn't want to do Tokyo? And it's sort of a 4-month rotation. And then I really thought, you know what, if I want to kind of transition back into the North American market, this would be a great opportunity, get my feet wet. And I think it's a case of physically being in the geographic location where you want to work that makes a difference. And it was at that time where I'd been there for a year and a half, so I'd been promoted from associate to senior. I just got my promotion. And they said, well, you're going to go over there. We're going to have you do associate work. And that's fine. And I think that's another thing you kind of have to be okay with taking that step back. And I think we see a lot of folks where, some people might have even been a partner in their local space, and they come here and you have to go kind of to starting block one. And that's, like, I learned that was okay. Like, it was hard, but it's okay. Hard. Once the rotation was done, they asked if I wanted to stay on in the US firm. And I think that's where you asked yourself, well, where's the market? Where does it make sense for me to go? And it was the market. Silicon Valley, it was fine, but there was a much hotter market in Texas at that time. The oil prices were still through the roof. And so when I was already going to make that transition, it was a case of, do I stay here? Plus, I couldn't really afford the cost of living.
Yeah, it's expensive.
It's very expensive. Yeah. And you were just starting out, you're like, well, I don't really want to share a basement with 6 other people.
Right.
And so Texas came up, and I had never been to Texas. I could barely point it out on a map. I was expecting tumbleweeds. I'm not joking.